incredibly exciting afternoon, and we're ready to get started. So, 그럼 the Connect 22 다시 시작하겠습니다. We are starting session 2 with a bang. We are very lucky to have a very special speaker with us. He is the Senior Executive Vice President at GS Home Shopping. GS Home Shopping 부사장님 박영훈. He has been on the front edge of innovation in Korea and home shopping, and he's going to talk to us about open innovation and CVC. So it is my honor to welcome to the stage the Executive Vice President, GS Home Shopping, Park Young-hoon. Huge applause. Thank you.
안녕하세요. 방금 소개받은 GS 홈쇼핑의 박영훈입니다. 제가 오늘 드릴 말씀은 대기업의 입장에서 어떻게 이 오픈 이노베이션이라는 낯선 주제를 소화하고 활용할 것인가라는 제목입니다. 저희 회사는 20여 년 동안 홈쇼핑이라는 산업을 만들어냈고 쭉 그 산업 내에서 리더십을 놓치지 않고 성장을 해왔습니다만 모든 세상사가 그렇듯이 사람도 그렇고 기업도 그렇고 수명이라는 게 있습니다. 라이프 사이클에 따라서 흥망성쇠를 반복하는 게 매우 자연스러운 일이기 때문에 대기업도 마찬가지로 그 산업의 성장 초입에는 그 성장을 즐길 수 있지만 점점 매추어되고 세츄레이션이 됨에 따라서 성장 동력을 잃을 수밖에 없습니다. 그러면 잃어가는 이 성장 동력을 어떤 식으로 다시 재점화할 것이라는 고민을 할 수밖에 없고요. 그 고민을 해결하기 위한 여러 노력 중에 오픈 이노베이션을 통해서 새로운 성장 동력을 찾아내야 되겠다라는 접근이 상당히 유효하고 많은 기업들이 시도를 하고 있습니다. 특히 그 중에서도 저희 회사는 Corporate Venture Capital이라는 형태의 오픈 이노베이션 툴을 활용을 해서 새로운 성장 동력을 확보하는 데 노력을 기울이고 있습니다. 제가 오늘 말씀드릴 여러 가지 사례를 통해서 한국 다른 대기업들도 오픈 이노베이션에 대한 관심이 많으신 걸로 알고 있고요. 특히 이제 CVC가 최근에 활성화되고 있다는 반가운 소식들도 접하고 있습니다. 이런 관점에서 제 얘기가 조금이나마 그런 트렌드에 도움이 됐으면 합니다. 간략하게 먼저 하이라이트만 말씀을 드리면 저희는 이제 전형적인 전략적 투자자입니다. 통상적인 VC들이 재무적 리턴을 가장 큰 목적으로 함에 비해서 SI이기 때문에 재무적인 리턴도 당연히 어느 정도 필요합니다만 전략적인 목적, 즉 새로운 사업 영역의 개발, 새로운 서비스나 사업 기술의 확보 또는 인재 확보 등등 어퍼튜니티 윈도우를 확보하기 위한 차원에서의 투자를 전략적인 목표를 삼고 있다는 게 가장 큰 차이고요. CVC는 VC와는 달리 많은 경우 자기 자본 투자를 합니다. 그리고 저희는 그 유의미한 지분율이라는 게 회사의 정책에 따라서 좀 달라질 수 있는데요. 경영권을 갖지는 않습니다. 하지만 그렇다고 또 너무 낮아서 경영에 전혀 참여를 하지 못하는 그런 낮은 지분율도 또한 원하지 않습니다. 그래서 통상적으로는 10에서 20% 정도의 세컨드 또는 third largest equity 파트너가 되는 걸 선호하고요. 보드에 한 명 정도 참여를 해서 주요 의사결정 과정에 참여하지만 저희가 저희 마음대로 의사결정을 하지는 못하는 그런 포지션을 선호하고요. 그래서 전략적 제휴 관계이면서 에쿼티 파트너십까지 갖고 있는 저희 용어로는 이제 significant minority라고 얘기를 하는데요. 그런 형태의 거버넌스 전략을 가지고 있습니다. 커버리지는 한국이 메인이긴 하지만 선진 시장인 중국과 미국 그리고 발전시켜야 되는 그런 시장으로서 동남아하고 중동까지 5개 지역 커버리지 갖고 있고 운영을 위해서는 투자를 직접 하는 딜 팀이 있고요. 그다음에 그 투자의 전 과정이나 사후의 재무적인 것들을 또는 법무적인 것들을 매니지해 주는 그런 관리 조직이 있고 COE라고 해서 저희가 투자한 회사들과 저희 본사의 전략적인 시너지를 만들어내는 것을 주 목적으로 하는 팀이 있습니다. 센터 오브 엑셀런스라고 하는데요. 이 부분은 제가 좀 더 자세하게 설명을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 지금 누적으로 보면 이거보다 좀 더 커졌을 텐데요. 아마 한 3,200~300억이 되고요. 펀드 투자가 반, 그다음에 다이렉트 투자가 반 해서 50% 정도의 구성을 하고 있습니다. 직접 투자의 경우에는 훨씬 더 저희랑 밀접한 관계를 맺을 수 있기 때문에 전략적으로 의미가 더 크지만 팀의 한계도 있고 하여 직접 다 하지는 못합니다. 그래서 저희랑 그 마음이 맞는 또는 디렉션이 맞는 펀드들하고 같이 얼라인해서 저희가 이제 출자를 하는 형태로 펀드 투자를 하고 그 펀드를 통해서 저희 리치를 키워나가는 그런 두 가지 방법을 혼용을 하고 있습니다. 간략한 예인데요. 여기 보시면은 뭐 약간 알만한 회사들도 있으실 것 같긴 합니다만 미국이나 중국, 동남아 그리고 중동까지 저희 포트폴리오가 가 있고 직접 투자하고 간접 투자도 한 반 정도의 구성. 그래서 국내 반, 해외 반, 직접 투자 반, 그다음에 간접 투자 반, 이 정도의 그 믹스로 저희의 그 알로케이션 전략을 수행하고 있다고 보시면 됩니다. 처음에는 셋업하는데 상당한 노력이 필요했습니다. 왜냐하면 이게 한국에서 그 많은 사례가 있지 않았었기 때문에 어떻게 해야 되는 건지에 대해서 여러 가지 다른 뷰들이 있었고 그리고 이걸 왜 해야 되는지에 대한 설득부터 시작이 됐었습니다. 제가 처음에 이제 GS에 갔을 때 혁신이 필요하고 회사가 바뀌어야 된다라는 위기 의식은 충만했지만 구체적으로 어떻게 이걸 할 것이냐에 대해서는 사실 명확한 방향이 없었는데 그때 이제 그 로직은 이런 거였죠. 기업이 혁신 동력을 잃으면 망한다. 근데 내부에서 혁신 동력을 만들어내는데 한계가 있다면 외부에서 찾아야 되고 가장 혁신이 많이 일어나고 있는 곳에 가야 된다. 그들을 데리고 올 수는 없고 우리가 가야 된다라는 게 이제 가장 큰 전제 조건이었고 그러면 전 세계에서 가장 혁신이 활발하게 일어나고 있는 것은 실리콘밸리, 뭐 테헤란밸리고 거기에 우리가 적극적으로 인게이지를 하기 위해서는 가서 만나서 인사하고 전략적 제휴한다고 사진 찍는 거 가지고는 안 되고 정말 이 장기간에 아무리 중간에 트러블이 있고 마음이 안 맞아도 결코 헤어질 수 없는 그런 관계를 만들지 않으면 이 효과는 지속될 수 없다라고 봤기 때문에 지분 투자라는 형식이 가장 강력한 인게이지먼트의 방식이다라고 저희가 이제 내부에서 결론을 내서 이제 CVC라는 형태로 시작을 한 겁니다. 다시 말씀드리면 GS샵의 CVC는 벤처 투자를 하기 위한 조직이라기보다는 회사의 진화, 발전, 변화를 위한 오픈 이노베이션의 하나의 방법으로서 CVC라는 형태를 취하고 있다고 설명드리는 것이 정확할 것 같습니다. 제가 지금 말씀드린 내용들이 그 정리가 되어 있는 겁니다. CVC의 목적이 뭐냐? 저희는 굉장히 거의 100% 전략적이다라고 얘기를 하고 있고요. 그래서 처음에 이렇게까지 얘기했으면 내부에서 CVC 투자를 해서 돈을 잃어도 상관없다. 돈 벌려고 투자하지 말자. 전략적으로 의미가 있으면은 잃어도 좋다. 이런 강력한 백업이 있었기 때문에 사실 시작을 할 수 있었고요. 다행히도 5, 6년이 지난 시점에서 저희가 보면은 사실 IRR 리턴도 굉장히 좋은 편입니다. 그래서 전략적인 목적, 전략적이다라는 그 원래의 목적에 충실한 결과 재무적인 목적까지도 일정 부분 달성을 하고 있다고 말씀드릴 수가 있고요. 뭐 전략도 그렇고 차별화된 요인들도 필요하고 운영도 기존의 이 VC들하고는 다를 수밖에 없다는 내용인데 그 이후 장표에서 제가 간단하게 몇 가지 설명을 드리겠습니다. 또 하나 이제 중요한 거는 최근에 이제 CVC에 대한 관심이 높아지면서 CVC를 하고자 하는 이제 기업들이 많이 생기는 것 같은데 제가 이제 조언을 드리는 포인트들은 몇 가지가 있습니다. 첫 번째로 이 충분한 이해가 없이 급하게 시작하지 않았으면 좋겠다라는 말씀을 드립니다. 급하게 시작하면 자꾸 마음이 급해져서 좋은 딜 찾아다니게 되고 좋은 딜 찾아다니면서 리턴만 생각하게 되는데 그거 악순환에 빠지기 제일 좋은 구조입니다. 그래서 롱텀 뷰가 정말로 필요하고요. 적어도 5년 이상 이거는 간다라는 생각이 없이는 시작할 때 그런 약속을 또는 커미트먼트를 최고 경영진 또는 주요 주주들한테 받고 시작을 해야 됩니다. 그게 약하면 정말로 이 약간의 뭐 투자를 하다 보면 당연히 안 되는 경우들도 있고 몇 개 회사는 당연히 망하는 거고 그런 건데 그것 때문에 CVC라는 또는 오픈 이노베이션이라는 중차대한 과제 자체가 훼손되는 경우들을 많이 보기 때문에 장기적인 커미트먼트 가장 중요하고요. 또 하나는 이게 별로 어려워 보이지 않나 봅니다. 그래서 안에 있는 똑똑한 친구들 시키면 되지 뭐 이렇게 얘기하시는 분들 자주 보는데 절대 그렇지 않습니다. 이게 굉장히 폐쇄적인 커뮤니티 베이스로 투자가 이루어지기 때문에 이 안에서의 네트워크를 만들기도 쉽지 않고 그 네트워크에서 배제돼 있으면 좋은 딜을 볼 수가 없습니다. 그래서 철저하게 인사이더가 있어야 됩니다. CVC를 시작할 때. 그래서 제가 항상 장기적인 관점에서의 커미트먼트, 그 다음에 적어도 한두 명 정도는 이 게임의 룰을 잘 알고 있는 플레이어가 있어야 된다. 아무리 훌륭한 내부 자원을 갖고 있다고 해도 그것만 가지고는 부족하다라는 조언을 간곡하게 드리고 있습니다. 저희 목적, 아까도 말씀드렸지만 가장 중요한 거는 저희가 갖고 있는 지금 현재의 사업을 새로운 비즈니스 모델이나 테크놀로지나 새로운 인력을 통해서 트랜스폼 하는 겁니다. 그래서 이 비즈니스 모델을 계속 개선해 나가는 그런 목적이 가장 크고요. 두 번째로 스타트업과 연계를 통해서 새로운 비즈니스 기회를 또 찾는 겁니다. 그래서 코어 비즈니스를 스케일업 하는 거하고 뉴 비즈니스 크리에이션 하는 것, 이 두 가지가 저희가 CBC를 운영하는 가장 큰 목적이라고 말씀드릴 수 있습니다. 말씀드렸지만 5개 지역, 그 다음에 펀드 오브 펀드, 즉 그 LP 출자하고 다이렉트 출자하고를 한 반 정도 알로케이션 하고 있고요. 섹터는 매우 중요합니다. 이 섹터가 어떻게 정의되느냐에 따라서 CVC의 전략과 리턴이 다 결정이 되기 때문에 저희의 사례를 가지고 섹터 포커스 좀 설명을 드리겠고요. 이제 어느 시점에 투자할 것이냐가 또 하나 중요한데 대부분 이제 VC 펀드들은 그 맨데이트에 정해져 있습니다. 우리는 뭐 프리 IPO 하겠다. 우리는 그로스 스테이지 한다. 우리는 슈퍼 시드 한다. 이렇게 돼 있는데 저희는 CVC이기 때문에 그런 부분으로부터는 자유스럽습니다. 어떤 스테이지인지 상관없이 저희가 필요하다고 생각되면 할 수 있습니다. 그래서 이런 거는 오히려 VC에 비해서 좀 자유롭다 생각하고 있고요. 그러다 보니까 저희는 요즘 그 분야에 따라서 스테이지가 결정이 되는 형태로 진화하고 있는데 예를 들어서 저희가 잘 알고 있고 즉시 시너지가 나는 그런 사업일 경우에는 레이터 스테이지 많이 합니다. 그리고 우리가 새롭게 연구하고자 하는 또는 비즈니스를 좀 개발하고 싶은 그런 경우에는 얼리 스테이지로 가는 그런 형태로 좀 분화가 되고 있고요. 거기에 따라서 이제 티켓 머니도 사이즈도 달라지는 그런 형태로 지금 점점 변화하고 있는 것 같습니다. 지역은 아까도 말씀드렸지만 이제 미국과 중국에서 갖고 있는 특히 이제 약간 이 미국의 장점과 중국의 장점이 다르다고 저는 생각을 하는데 애플리케이션 레벨로 가면 중국이 굉장히 빠르고요. 일단 고객 베이스가 많고 데이터도 훨씬 더 자유롭게 쓸 수 있기 때문에 발전의 속도가 어마어마하고 미국은 아무래도 이제 펀더멘털 쪽이 강하기 때문에 그쪽에서 나오는 혁신들이 좀 차별화돼 있다고 생각하고요. 그런 것들을 저희가 펀드나 직접 투자를 통해서 소스를 계속 받아오고 있고 한국에서 그걸 쿠킹한 다음에 동남아 중동으로 이 비즈니스 모델들 검증된 모델을 가지고 나가서 직접 사업을 수행하는 또는 현지에 있는 유사한 사업 모델을 갖고 있는 파트너와 함께 사업을 수행하는 그런 사업 전략을 가지고 있습니다. 그래서 대표적인 예들 몇 개 말씀드리면 500하고 펀드를 한 서너 개 만들었고요. 블루런하고도 중국에 들어가 있고 앤더슨 호로위츠하고 바이오하고 블록체인 펀드, 그다음에 이게 시노베이션 벤처스, 그다음 웨이메이커, 이건 이제 원래 LA에 있는데 동남아의 그 딥텍 펀드에 들어가 있습니다. 스톤하고 저희 전략 펀드 만들었고 알토스는 거의 매 펀드에 저희가 다 들어가 있고요. 그다음에 고비 파트너스라고 해서 동남아의 그 그로스 스테이지 펀드를 저희가 앵커 파트너로 들어가서 펀드를 거의 같이 운영을 하고 있습니다. 오케이. 이게 이제 아까 말씀드린 섹터 포커스인데요. 그 도메인 전략입니다. 다시 한번 말씀을 드리자면. 그래서 저희가 이제 이걸 1년에서 1년 반마다 한 번씩 리프레시 하는데 비즈니스 모델이 진화하고 우리 비즈니스의 니즈도 바뀌기 때문에 계속적으로 이제 업데이트를 합니다. 어떤 섹터들은 버리고 어떤 섹터들은 새로 넣고 지금 보시면 뉴테크, 데이터나 AI, 그다음에 커뮤니티 플랫폼, 커머스 이네이블링, 마케팅 이런 키워드들이 있고요. 여기에 해당되는 포트폴리오를 만들기 위해서 지속적으로 파이프라인을 유지하고 있습니다. 그래서 이런 맵들을 가지고 있습니다. 저희가 어떤 섹터에 어떤 비즈니스들이 있고 이 중에 우리가 이제 그 어떤 밸류 체인을 선택적으로 들어갈 거냐. 그래서 전형적으로 저희는 그 탑다운 방식입니다. 저희가 먼저 섹터를 보고 스터디를 하고 그림을 다 그린 다음에 이 회사가 우리한테 맞구나 하고 들어가지. 저희를 먼저 찾아오는 그렇다고 저희 찾아오는 회사를 문전 박대하거나 그러진 않지만 많은 경우 탑다운 방식으로, 왜냐하면 전략적 투자자이기 때문에 그렇습니다. 그래서 이런 VC와는 접근이 좀 다를 수밖에 없다는 것을 CVC를 생각하시는 분들은 잘 이해하시는 게 중요할 것 같습니다. 시간이 지금 좀 전에도 말씀드렸지만 저희가 이제 스테이지 같은 경우는 뭐 얼리부터 IPO, 프리 IPO까지 자유스럽게 할 수 있는 전략적 펀드이기 때문에 자유도를 갖고 있고요. 그래서 뭐 이상적으로는 얼리 스테이지에 들어가서 검증이 되면은 같이 성장해 나가면서 팔로운 해서 마지막에는 창업자들하고 같이 회사를 운영하는, 저희 지분율이 서서히 늘어나는 그런 구조를 생각을 하고 있습니다만, 이거는 이제 아주 교과서적인 아이디어라는 경우고요. 뭐 한두 개 이제 사례도 만들고 있긴 합니다. 근데 중간에 이제 뭐 저희가 엑시트를 하는 경우도 있고 여러 가지 이제 단 베리에이션들이 존재합니다. 어쨌거나 이런 이제 스테이지를 정함에 있어서 우리가 얼마나 그 도메인에 전문성이 있는지, 우리가 도와줄 수 있는지에 따라서 저희 스테이지도 좀 변할 수 있다라고 아까도 이제 말씀을 드린 바와 유사합니다. 저희 이제 CVC를 함에 있어서 이제 제일 어려운 점은 이런 겁니다. 저희가 전략적으로 굉장히 중요하고 의미 있겠다라고 생각한 회사지만 막상 창업자들하고 얘기를 해보면 저희는 뭐 VC들한테 돈 이미 충분히 받았고 굳이 SI로부터 돈을 받아서 SI가 가지고 있는 그들의 전략적 목적과 조율하는 불편함을 또는 이 번거로움을 택하고 싶지 않습니다라는 생각을 가진 분들도 상당히 많습니다. 되게 뭐 자연스러운 거고요. 저도 충분히 이해를 합니다. 그런 입장에 대해서. 그래서 그걸 저희가 뭐 그렇다고 애걸복걸을 해서 해결될 문제가 아니기 때문에, 그렇다면 CVC 돈을 SI의 투자를 받을 이유를 만들어줘야 됩니다. 그래서 그 이유를 만들기 위한 노력들이 지금 여기 나와 있는 건데, 저희가 도움을 많이 줄 수 있다는 걸, 그 돈 이외에 어떤 도움을 그 SI로부터 얻을 것이냐라는 설득이 필요합니다. 그걸 저희 용어로는 이제 오퍼링이라고 하는데, 아까도 말씀드린 것처럼 이제 COE 같은 조직을 통해서 그들의 성장을 지원한다라든지, 저희 이제 GWG라는 행사가 있습니다. 네트워킹을 열심히 또 지원하고, GWG 아카데미라고 해서 스타트업 경영진들이 이제 목마른 부분들이 있습니다. 뭐 기술일 수도 있고 법률일 수도 있고 뭐 문화일 수도 있고, 그런 주제들을 가지고 계속 아카데미를 돌립니다. 채용 되게 중요하고요. 저희가 좋은 인재들을 확보해서 채용을 지원하기도 하고, 그 다음에 더 중요한 거는 사실 그 스타트업들한테는 가장 중요한 이 성장의 모멘텀은 결국은 트래픽을 만들고 세일즈를 만드는 겁니다. 그래서 GS가 가지고 있는 세일즈 플랫폼에 그들의 상품이나 서비스를 올려서 판매를 만들어주는 게 가장 큽니다. 그런 사례들을 저희가 상당히 많이 만들고 있고요. 뭐 로봇 청소기 회사, 뭐 먹는 콜라겐 회사, 펫 IoT 회사, 이런 회사들이 저희 MD를 통해서 소싱이 돼서 저희 TV 채널 또는 그 모바일 플랫폼을 통해서 판매가 계속 이루어지고 있고, 지금 이제 거의 취급액 기준으로는 이제 1,000억 대 이상의 매출을 만들어내고 있다라는 게 저희로서는 가장 고무적이고, 이 비율이 저희 회사 전체 레베뉴에 더 많은 비중을 차지하게 만드는 게 오픈 이노베이션이 성공하고 있다라는 반증이 될 거라고 저는 믿고 있습니다. CEO인데요. 그 스타트업의 성장 과정에 따라서 꼭 필요한 인력과 역량이 수급이 안 맞는 경우들이 허다합니다. 그래서 IT 출신들이 만든 회사 마케팅 약한 경우 너무 많고, 반대의 경우도 흔하고, 그렇게 해서 저희가 이제 IT나 뭐 데이터나 이런 비즈니스 스트래티지나 뭐 이런 것들의 전문성을 가진 분들로 팀을 아예 짜서 저희가 투자한 회사들의 성장 단계에 따라서 이 팀들이 이제 그들과 매치해서 프로젝트 팀을 만들어서 같이 작업을 합니다. 올해는 저희는 거의 이 팀이 다 얌테이블이라는 회사에 들어가서 같이 일을 했어요. 그래서 얌테이블이 갖고 있는 훌륭한 모델의 훌륭한 부분이 있고 부족한 부분이 있는데, 부족한 부분을 스팟으로 메꿔주는, 그래서 거의 뭐 3개월, 4개월 같이 거제도 내려가서, 거제도였나요? 통영 내려가서 프로젝트하고 프라이싱 다 뜯어고치고 모델 다 만들어주고, 그런 형태로 도움을 줍니다. 그러면 이제 그들이 스타트업 벤처 캐피탈로부터 투자를 받는 장단점이 있고, SI로부터 투자를 받을 때 장단점이 있구나라는 것을 체감을 하게 되죠. 저는 이런 프랙티스가 점점 커져야 된다고 믿고 있습니다. GWG고요. 여기 보면은 저희가 처음에 이제 뭐 IT라든지 뭐 쇼케이스 등등 여러 가지 시작해서 다양한 주제로 행사를 진행을 하고 있고, 뭐 해외에서도 여러 차례 했고요. 작년에 이제 베트남에서 한 거를 마지막으로 올해는 지금 못 하고 있습니다. 코로나의 영향이죠. 그래서 저희도 이거를 버추얼로 해야 되나 뭐 등등 여러 가지 고민하고 있는데 더 고민이 필요한 것 같습니다. 그러니까 이제 CVC의 주요 역할 차별 포인트 중에 이제 COE 얘기를 드렸는데, COE가 지금 이런 일들을 다 같이 합니다. 저희가 이제 투자하는 회사들을 회사에 적극적으로 소개해 주는 것도 필요하고, 그다음에 우리 회사가 갖고 있는 역량을 스타트업의 성장에 도움이 되는 형태로 부어 넣어주는 것도 중요하기 때문에 그 두 가지 약간 이제 내부와 외부의 경계에 서서 연결 역할을 해주는 그런 중요한 팀이 아까 말씀드린 COE라고 말씀드릴 수가 있습니다. 오케이. 이제 의사결정 구조나 운영 체계나 이런 것들도 사실 되게 많은 이제 임플리케이션이 있는데, 이 부분은 아마 CVC에 관심이 있으신 분들은 훨씬 더 질문이 많으실 것 같긴 합니다만, 그거는 따로 제가 말씀을 드릴 기회가 있으면 좋겠습니다. 그래서 오늘 말씀드린 내용 다시 한번 랩업하자면은 제일 중요한 거는 투자를 위해서 시작한 게 아니고 회사 전체의 이 혁신과 성장을 위해서, 트랜스포메이션을 위해서 오픈 이노베이션의 한 툴로서 CVC를 하고 있고, 한 5년 정도의 사실은 긴 시간입니다. 기업의 입장에서는 5년 정도의 적극적인 투자와 팀 운영을 통해서 이제는 코어 비즈니스에서도 이게 중요하구나, 도움이 되는구나라는 것을 인정하는 단계까지 온 점이 그동안의 성과라고 말씀드릴 수가 있겠습니다. 다른 많은 한국 기업들도 변신을 준비함에 있어서 CVC라는 형태를 적극적으로 활용해 보실 것을 저는 제언을 드립니다. 감사합니다.
네, 박영훈 본사장님 이렇게 좋은 말씀 해주셔서 너무 감사해요. CVCs play such an important role in the ecosystem, and so later on when we have a panel talk, we'll go a little bit deeper into that topic. Now we're going to go overseas, and we are thrilled to be welcoming one of our colleagues from Singapore. Stephen Tong is the head of the Singapore chapter at SAP, SAP.io Foundry. He himself has a long history in startups. He's also invested in over 45 startups in the region and has dedicated the majority of his life to supporting entrepreneurs. Stephen, are you here with us? Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I am.
Stephen,
Thanks for
how are
having
you?
me. Good. 안녕하세요 to everybody.
Wow, 안녕하세요. Well, it is our honor to welcome you to Korea. I know you're a very busy man, but for you to join us and to talk about this very important topic, we're very, very humbled and grateful. You're going to be talking about investing and accelerating in external startups and innovation. So I'm going to... Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much. If you can just share my screen. The host, you need to give me screen sharing rights.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to give you the screen sharing rights, but if you do have something, maybe you could send it over and we'll pop it on screen.
Okay.
Well, how about this? If you why don't you go ahead and start the talk, and we'll start to upload your slides along the way.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this conference of yours. So, quick introduction about SAP.io. So we are actually the startup partnership arm of SAP. And for those of you who may not know who SAP is, we are one of the largest software companies in the world. In fact, the third largest enterprise software company in the world. And we are the market leader in ERP applications. And the scale of our operations is such that 77% of the world's transactions revenue actually touches the SAP system. And while 92% of all global 2,000 companies in the world are our customers, the reality is that 80% of all our customers globally are actually SMEs. So this is something that people don't really realize, because you normally would associate SAP with being a big enterprise customer only. Now, a little bit about SAP.io. SAP.io, we fall under the new ventures and technology group in SAP, and there are actually four main functions. Function number one is actually something called Venture Studio. Venture Studio is
Steven, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we just fixed things, and actually you can now share your screen. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen,
awesome. I'm so sorry. I'm still getting the host disabled participant screen sharing thing.
We try one more time to give an access rights.
Yeah, if you can just make me a presenter or co-host, I should be able to share screen.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We want you. We're going to give you access right now, and then we're going to allow you to share your screen and your slides. But I will say you look great on our screen right now, and everyone here is super excited.
Thank you.
Let's see. Let me just confirm. Do we give him the rights to share his slides? Yep. I think we're heading that way. Steven, do you want to give it a try one more time?
No. Host disabled participant.
Host disabled.
Sharing.
Okay. Well, why don't you continue on, and we'll try one more time. Yeah. I'll probably continue to bother you.
한 번만.
Yeah. not a problem. So Venture Studio was set up to really help SAP employees to set up and run their own enterprise software startup inside SAP. Right? And we have another internal internal program called SAP Entrepreneurship 1 Billion Lives. And under that program, we work with social impact entrepreneurs that are interested to create social impact startups that can have an impact on the community at large. But today's talk is not about what we're doing internally, because these are only for
Steven,
SAP.
I'm sorry, I told you I'd be back.
Yeah.
Let's try it one more time. We see your screen here, but
I think that should be okay now.
Is it working?
Yes. Can you see my screen? All right. Okay. This is so much better.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So it's quite all right. The front part of the presentation is not really that important. This is, I think, where it's more important. And the whole focus for today's talk is really about what we at Fund and Foundries are doing to engage the external startup ecosystem. Right. A quick background on why we were set up. We were set up primarily to help SAP drive meaningful partnerships with startups. And when I say meaningful partnership, it really boils down to three things. Number one, we want to integrate the startup solutions together with the many SAP products and platforms that we have. And integration is not a complex development process, right? We are really talking about just using APIs and connecting up the various systems together. And generally, this can be completed within 2 to 3 months. Having done the integration, we want to put the startups onto the SAP App Center, which will then enable our sales and account executives worldwide to sell the startup solution to our hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. So, and primarily, we set this up with the goal of helping startups to go to market. Now, it is not a charity thing that we are doing this, right? We are working with startups because we feel that startups can provide innovative solutions that can augment and complement the many products that SAP currently already have.
그래서 이미 말이 나와 있는 SAP 제품들을
now,
통해서
whatever that we are doing is totally aligned with SAP's corporate strategy, which is to deliver an intelligent enterprise to our customers. We generally look at working with startups that satisfy 3 criteria. Number one, they have
저희는 다음과
complementary
같은 기준을 가지고
and
있습니다. 첫 번째는
non-competing solutions
인텔리전트
with
스위트입니다.
the many products that SAP has.
많은
And
SAP
quite
제품들은
honestly, this is the hardest
솔직히
criteria to fill.
말씀드리지만
SAP, we already have many products, right? But even though we have many products, many solutions, we cannot do everything. And when there's a gap, I think this is where we really want to work with startups to fulfill the gap and help them to provide value to our customers. Number two, the startups should generally have some funding to allow them to be financially sustainable in the foreseeable future. And number three, the startup should have launched their product in the market and have a couple of customers that they can use as case studies. As you can tell from these three criteria, we are not set up to work with early stage startups. And this is deliberate because our goal at the end of the day is to help the startups go to market and make sales with our customers. Our customers are not going to engage with startups that are still developing their solutions and don't really have any proof points on whether they will work in an enterprise environment yet, right? So apologies to the early stage startups, but there is a pathway for you to work towards if you are interested to partner with us. A little bit about the fund and foundries. The SAP.io fund is primarily an early stage fund investing in seed and Series A startups. We have portfolio managers who are based in the US, Silicon Valley, and in Europe. And the focus of this fund is looking at investments for emerging technologies, right? That can include like machine learning, AI, blah, blah, blah. And more importantly, these solutions can help enlarge SAP's total addressable market. So that is the whole sole focus of this fund. Now, for the foundries, on the other hand, it's very different. We are a zero equity startup partnership program, right? So over a 3-month period, we work with startups that we have selected that can fulfill and complement functionality gap in our existing solution. During the 3 months, we help them with the integration of the products, get them on the SAP App Center, and of course, at the same time, build a go-to-market strategy on how we can work with them to drive sales in the region that matters to the startups. And for the foundries, we operate 9 foundries around the world, 4 in Europe, 2 in America, and 3 in Asia Pacific, which are in Singapore, where I'm based, Tokyo, and the newest one that was opened in Bangalore, India. We run 2 programs a year for each foundry, and the programs are operated on a thematic approach where we either operate based on a certain product line of SAP, or we operate based on an industry team. For example, we may be focusing on Industry 4.0 or the consumer industries. Now, the reason why we are putting investments into programs like this is because at the end of the day, our customers are the beneficiaries of this open innovation approach. Our customers are facing a lot of challenges now. Digital transformation, digitization of their business. I think it's fair to say that COVID-19 had accelerated this digital transformation trend. And it is not going to go away anytime soon. And in fact, it's probably taken a lot more significance compared to this time last year. But number 2, customers are facing a lot of disruptions due to many reasons, primarily driven by technological changes or business model changes happening in their industry. Right? I mean, like a classic example would probably be like Uber, right? They had they disrupted the traditional taxi car companies and provided much better options for consumers who are looking to take a ride home. Consumers, they are not so sure how should they go about approaching all these innovation challenges that they face, and they are asking us for help. And while as SAP we can do a lot, we cannot do everything, and that is where, together with a startup ecosystem that is partnered together with us, we can deliver a lot of value to existing customers or even new customers that are trying to drive innovation and change within their organization. the key benefits, I won't go through all of them, but I'll just like point out one or two key points. At the end of the day, we really want to extend and to protect the value of the investments that the customers have made in SAP's solutions. So they have spent a lot of money implementing SAP products, and want to make them make the full use of their investments, and in certain cases, bring in startups that can help drive new functionality that they need but are not provided by what we have. And like I mentioned many times, the key goal at the end of the day is always to support the customers as they drive their own innovation agendas together with SAP and our startup partners in their innovation journey. There are two ways that we engage with customers. The easiest way starts from a foundry visit. Now, given the COVID situation nowadays, it's not possible to visit the foundry physically. But in fact, I think this is a greater opportunity now, because doing a virtual event like this is so easy, and it can involve so many more people in the organization who otherwise may not be able to travel to our foundries around the world. Right. Now, the second more tangible way will be through pilots. So, and there are many customers who have set up pilot projects with our startups, test out the integration with their SAP systems, and should the pilot work out great, these typically translates into a commercial sale at the end of the pilot. The best way to look at the many startups that we have worked with will be through the two URLs that I've shown on the screen. SAP.io/App Center will be highlighting those startups that have integrated with SAP and are already listed on our App Center. And if you're interested to look at who we have invested in and can be disclosed publicly, you can go to the fund/portfolio URL. To take a look. Over the past few years, though, we have worked with probably more than 300 companies, right? Although not all the companies have listed on App Center, and obviously not every company is a fund portfolio. A bit on an actual case study on how we have actually worked with a car customer. Beiersdorf is an international skincare company. You might know one of their key products, which is Nivea. Right, so they are looking at how they can identify and work with interesting and innovative startups. So they visited our foundry in Berlin. We hosted a roundtable where we brought in our portfolio companies to just showcase their AI, machine learning solutions to the Chief Digital Officer of Beiersdorf. Suffice to say that they were very interested to work with the startups, and 4 pilot projects were launched as a result of this engagement. This quote from the CIO of Bumblebee Seafoods, they are most famous for, of course, I think canned tuna is one of the key products. Really illustrates and summarizes what I've been trying to say. To the customers, it is important for them to get access to new tech and innovations that can support their business. And the reason why they work with SAP and .io is because we have done the hard work, right, to curate the startups that are relevant for the customers and integrate nicely with the SAP systems that they have already invested in. Right? So this just reduces the time to value significantly for the customers who are already working with us. And with that, I come to my presentation. Glad to take any Q&A from the floor, if there's time.
All right, well, thank you so much for the awesome presentation. We're actually going to keep you and have you join us in a little bit for the panel, and we've got plenty of questions for you. So thank you so much for your incredible talk. We're actually going to stay in Singapore.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We're going to stay in Singapore. We're super lucky to have the head of investments at SG Innovate, Xin Yi Tong, join us. Xin, can you hear us right now?
Forward to doing my presentation.
All right, welcome. Can you hear us okay and see us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys, and I can actually share my screen as well.
Fantastic. So there are no technical difficulties with you. Well, we are excited to hear your talk on building and growing the startup ecosystem in Singapore. Singapore obviously plays an important role in the entire APAC regional area. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and we'll talk to you also a little bit during the panel. Off to you.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you very much to the organizers and the sponsors for inviting me to speak. It's a great privilege and honor, and also thank you very much, my old friend Stephen, for debugging some of the technical difficulties at the start. I'm sort of benefiting from all this. For those as introduced, my name is Xian Hui. I'm the Executive Director of Investments for SG Innovate. We're an early stage deep tech investor backed by the Singapore government. But we do more than just financial investments. We also help companies source for talent, promote what they do, guide them to meet commercial milestones to raise the next round of funding. And hopefully, if they grow sufficiently large, then, companies or organizations such as SAP IO will then be able to incorporate them into their products and services. So today's topic of developing startups in Singapore is really relevant to SG Innovate. And I'll start perhaps with a few statistics that show where we are currently. Excuse me. Firstly, I think the big number there is $19 billion. That's in Singapore dollars, roughly translates to about 13 billion US dollars. This was the amount committed by the Singapore government from the period 2015 to 2020, and it is meant to be invested in areas such as research and development, grants for new startups, incentive schemes, as well as developmental investments as well. And the purpose of the funds is to act in a sense as a catalyst for further investments from the private sector to match or even surpass the funds that have been committed. It is really meant to cover the whole, the broader technological landscape. But in the last 5 years, the focus really has been on the service, what they call the services digital economy, which encompasses e-commerce, artificial intelligence, fintech, so on and so forth. There are actually discussions underway, and I think probably in the next few months, there will be an announcement as to the next tranche of a similar, if not larger amount to be committed for the period between 2020 to 2025. So I think, obviously they say money makes the world go round. So the amount of money that the government is putting into, goosing to a certain extent the deep tech or the tech ecosystem for startups is a big contributor to the development of the startup ecosystem in Singapore. Now, the second thing is that, we're ranked number 1 for startup talent by Genome's 2017 edition. I know it's a little bit dated. That's the last edition that was widely published. But I don't think that this number 1 ranking is just solely due to the strength of our institutes of higher learning or even the entrepreneurial bent of our workforce. It also has got a lot to do with the kind of policies that allows foreign talent to come to Singapore on special visas that we call the EntrePass, which grants founders of companies that are domiciled in Singapore to be able to bring such talent into the country. Much more easily than if they were to apply through the normal employment pass channels. We're ranked the 6th most innovative city, but really that's not such a key factor. That's not really such a key indicator. I think more important is this figure of 55,000. We have 55,000 startups registered in the technology space. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail as to what areas they focus on. But I think one of the the creation of what they call innovation sandboxes in the spaces of fintech, autonomous vehicles, and smart manufacturing has allowed early stage companies to test new technology and business models to help them grow to maturity without being rejected outright based on the existing regulatory framework. Some other statistics, I promise you this is my last stat slide. Singapore was recently ranked the world's most competitive economy by the World Economic Forum. It's a testimony to in a certain sense as to how pro-business our policies are and how open we are to do business with the world. But again, more importantly is perhaps a statistic on the graph side, which shows the gradual increase initially and the impact of venture capital funding on the startup ecosystem. And you can see that when the Singapore government first, launched what they call the RIE 2020 plan in 2015, There was a minimal amount of venture capital going into the system, but as they started to gain traction, obviously it sort of led to a knock-on effect, and there's more and more VC money now coming into Singapore to fund companies as they start to mature. So the bulk of our tech startups are really in the areas listed in the slides. Industries of focus, you can imagine, would be really in fintech, cybersecurity, e-commerce, medtech, transportation, advanced manufacturing, agri-food. But I think on the right, you can see that, while these are industries of focus, there is a convergence with deep tech, and that's what differentiates some of the startups that we have in the local ecosystem. So other than the usual artificial intelligence, blockchain, digitalization, medtech, we also have a lot of research and development and companies even coming out of the quantum space, the autonomous vehicle space, and the robotics space. So these are just some of the technologies that are really, starting to make a difference in these industries, where we have startups. And I'll have some examples later on in my slides. Okay, these are some of the key government stakeholders. It is not comprehensive by any means. The reality is that nearly every single ministry in Singapore, government agency, is involved in some way to this commitment to support the startup ecosystem. However, I'm highlighting some of the key players as they are the ones that really administer the bulk of the programs, incentives, investments for startups. At the center of all this is really the National Research Foundation. They administer the $13 billion committed by the government and for startups. And depending on the objectives of the other agencies, the National Research Foundation, or NRF, will actually apportion part of the commitment to their particular programs. However, I think as a qualifier, the NRF doesn't fund all of Enterprise Singapore's operations or EDB's operations. They actually do fall under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, but a portion of what they do to support the startup ecosystem is supported with, in collaboration with the National Research Foundation. Similarly, with SG Innovate, we are an investment firm. We administer, or we are fund managers for part of the funds that have been allocated for developmental purposes in technology. Of course, Temasek Holdings is our big sister. They are the big sovereign wealth fund of Singapore. However, they do have smaller funds where which they are co-LPs with the National Research Foundation, funds such as Zora, which are used for very early stage tech investments in emerging technologies like space tech and quantum technology. Of course, you've got the IPOS, Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, that looks after the intellectual property framework that sort of guides how we protect the research that's going on in Singapore. They play a big role because deep tech startups really need a lot of IP protection, as much protection as they can get, to create that technological barrier or moat that will stop people from just replicating what they do. And of course, the other agencies, the Economic Development Board, the Infocom Media Development Authority, and the A*STAR are all big players in this space as well. Now, when we first started on this journey of trying to grow the startup ecosystem in Singapore, obviously it was thought that just by emulating some of the policies and programs that led to the rise of Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv would sort of spark a similar growth in Singapore. We learned along the way, not all of these policies worked, some did not. And it was really a reflection of the circumstances that led to the development of Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv that were not present in Singapore, that led to this, to the differences in the outcomes. So we sort of adapted the kind of programs we did, and we sort of mapped the kind of processes, the kind of policies that we had to the startup life cycle. I think the first speaker did show a chart as to how the startup life cycle is like from an investment perspective. Series A, seed funding, Series B. I've sort of mapped it from a product development perspective, where you've got the ideation stage of a company, validation of the idea, a proof of concept, and at a minimum viable product, following which you need a validation of the business model, and then subsequently the growth. And obviously financing comes in different stages. And we realize that as a government, as the Singapore government needs to support companies at different stages, the policies do need to change as well. So this is ultimately the map that we have. Again, as I said, it is not comprehensive. It is only meant to highlight the government programs that are in play for startups. There are, of course, a lot of stakeholders outside the government. There are, obviously the corporates represented by the likes of SAP, and some of the other multinationals in Singapore. There are, of course, the non-profits. There are the accelerator programs. There are the venture building programs. I've sort of left them out because they all form part of the whole. But fundamentally, the foundation of a lot of the reasons why startups are able to grow in Singapore derives from this map, where from an ideation stage and even up to a validation stage, it is the purview or really the oversight is provided by the universities in Singapore. Most of the IP, most of the innovations come from there or from one of their spin-off or research bodies. And if they get to a stage where they're ready to spin off a company, then Enterprise Singapore administers a whole bunch of really great programs. They've got the Startup Founder Incentive Scheme. If your tech is deemed advanced enough, you can apply for a startup tech grant that will give you grants based on certain milestones of development that your product has. There's also a startup talent scheme that incentivizes you to hire great talent for the ecosystem. Startup infrastructure allows you to actually rent space. And then Startup Accelerator is meant more for accelerators to set up shop in Singapore so that they can help the ecosystem to move their product from a proof of concept to an MVP, and where they can then start to work with big customers. And a few of those organizations that are involved at all the different stages, Enterprise Singapore obviously is the one that oversees this. Infocom Media Development Authority looks at those schemes related more to digitalization and the digital economy. IPOS, I mentioned, they look at the IP part of it, and they'll be involved really from the ideation all the way down. And SG Innovate, we're one of those, we are one of two fund managers of the Startup SG Equity Scheme, which is an investment scheme for startups that show promise. And even though the fundamental premise is returns, there is a developmental angle to the Startup SG Equity Scheme. But how all this is funded is really through this the administration of the National Research Foundation, which is why they're at the bottom of the chart. And once they get past this validation of business model, which will be roughly at a Series B stage, then they can sort of engage with the Economic Development Board, who have an investment arm like the EDBI or Temasek Holdings, and then they can make use of programs like our Global Innovation Network. Okay, I'm going to just give some examples as to how this whole process flow is like. You just excuse me. Yeah, so one of the examples that we have, and I've got a few examples here that's probably going to take us to the end of the session. The first one is in robotic surgery. So NDR Medical is a company that came out of the Nanyang Technological University. They developed a robotic surgery device that integrates artificial intelligence with computer vision, so that they can actually, you can actually position your needle more accurately prior to making an incision, either for liquid biopsy or for what they call PCNL, which is used for kidney stone extraction. So they went through the process of developing the intellectual property, the background IP in Nanyang Technological University. They moved on to A-Star, which then developed the foreground IP to be able to build a proof of concept. They made use of schemes like the Startup Founder, the Startup Tech grants, and then we invested in them in two rounds. In the initial round, when we were the only investors, just to get them off the ground to build the minimum viable product. And then most recently, when Microport from China came in to make a larger investment in their Series A, we participated in that as well. So this is a story of how a company actually grows from the IP, from the university, all the way to actually, building their minimum viable product, working with a big corporate, and with probably a bright future, coming on the horizon for them. This is a slightly different example. This is an example of how we actually do scout and try to bring in the best companies from overseas with the best technologies to actually come into Singapore and use Singapore as a base to almost build an ecosystem around their technologies. So Tiger was originally from Spain. The founder did his PhD at the University of Innsbruck. He started his company in Spain. They specialize in what they call natural language processing, part of artificial intelligence. And what they actually do is they are able to interpret and read large volumes of documents and to be able to highlight very quickly what the problems are, or to even provide scoring in terms of the accuracy or the outcome that is needed. So they've got tremendous applications in the fintech sector, which is the sector that they are targeting and that they have a beachhead in. In this instance, what happens that when we convince them to come to Singapore, when they move to Singapore, the Infocomm Media Development Authority, actually, because it's an IT company, they granted them what they call an accreditation, which gave them a sort of green lane for a lot of government contracts. So, when they bid for contracts, they do not need to go in for the whole tender process. They just need to show proof that they can actually get the objectives that the ministry or the stat board needs, and then they are able to secure a contract on that basis, provided of course the valuation of the cost is right. We invested in them again in 2 rounds, obviously once at the very start when they first came in, and most recently in a round that included some of the big investment firms. As the round hasn't officially closed yet, I'm not going to share their names, but they include some from Korea as well. So I think this is an example of how we bring in talent as well as knowledge from overseas. This one's interesting. This one is in cybersecurity, but it's a little bit different. It is in the quantum space, called quantum key distribution. I know I've worked with SK Telecom in Korea with regards to this same technology. Basically, it helps to identify whether there's been a man-in-the-middle attack, and then it uses quantum effects to sort of identify that this attack has taken place and that to resend the private key. They originated from the National University of Singapore. They went through the Center for Quantum Technologies, which is part of NUS. And then similarly, they did the startup founder, SG Tech. We invested in them through SG Equity, and then we helped them secure their current round of funding with Space Angels, a US-based investment firm. So they are still relatively at an earlier stage, but I think again, they have got the traction overseas and the awareness of what they do. Pure play quantum computing, Horizon Quantum Computers. It's a Singapore company, a Singaporean founder, or at least one of them is. And what they do is they basically tackle the problem of having a lack of quantum coders in the system. We have got lots of quantum computers. You've got the trapped ions, you've got superconducting qubits, you've got photonics and all that, but it always lacks the programmers, because programmers need to be able to code optimally for a quantum computer, and not many computer science students are trained to do so. So what they've developed is a compiler which allows you to actually code in MATLAB, or one of the more common languages, and to be able to translate that into quantum optimal codes depending on the machine that you are using. Similarly, this company came out SUTD and went through the Center of Quantum Technology. SG Innovate actually did something that we don't often do, which is we actually invested in the company just on the basis of the idea. He had not even left the university yet. He's a tenured professor, and he had not left the university yet. Everything he did had no IP or anything around it, and we made an investment because we believed that this company could make it. And he subsequently resigned his tenure from the university, came out, did the business, and in the most recent round, Sequoia actually invested, and it's likely that they're going to be investing in the next round because there's tremendous excitement about what they're doing. So this is my final example. I know I'm running out of time. This is an example of how the whole of government comes together to sort of help some technology that's developed in the university. So this was founded by an undergraduate from the university. And what they do is, most people would know 3D printing to be based on extrusion technology. You sort of drip things down and you sort of build a little mold. But what Structo does is actually using lithographic techniques. They use semiconductor manufacturing techniques to be able to build out. So instead of building something, based on extrusion, they sort of cut it out of a particular type of material or medium. This provides a lot more high definition products, and they are able to use this for molds for your aligners, which is what is the business use case for this. And they've sold a lot of machines in the US. It's very popular with them. But basically, this was almost a whole of government involvement. Enterprise Singapore helped them obviously with founder tech, startup tech, and all that. IPOS with the IP, and then Economic Development Board and SG Innovate also came in their most recent round. Now, even though the dental market has perhaps been impacted a little bit by the COVID-19 lockdowns, they were able to very quickly pivot what they did, or the spare machines that they had, to actually build those nasal swabs, which was in big shortage for a long while. So I think this was one of the companies which actually, I won't say took advantage, but leveraged the gaps in the market during the COVID-19 lockdown, and were able to build a bit an alternative line of business just based on that. And of course, now that things are more or less back to normal, they're selling machines again quite effectively. Okay, so with that, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion later on.
Thank you so much. Huge round of applause real quick. That was incredible. While I have you, we're going to be in transition mode to our panel, but it just seems like you invest in such a diverse range of verticals. I mean, you had biotech, you had consumer tech. I'm curious, in Singapore, because of the pandemic, have you seen a decline in the number of pitches, or it seems like you've been incredibly active? We still? Stephen, Shinhui, are you still on? No?
Still on. Yep.
Okay, not yet. All right, well, I'm going to ask you the same question anyway in about a minute, so no worries. We're going to head over to the panel session. This one obviously was about open innovation. So we have 3 heavyweights, 2 from Singapore and 1 from Korea, with a depth of experience and a long history in this investing track. So I'm going to invite 박영훈 부사장님 더 스테이지로 초대하고요. And do we still have our 2 speakers online? Yeah. Oh, we have a video. Same one. Okay, I'm gonna come over here. Get ready for our second session. Need one more mic. Okay, so I think we're still waiting for a couple folks to join us online, right? But shall we begin with the panel here? Okay. Can you guys hear us okay, Stephen? Can we?
Yep.
Okay, great.
A little bit soft, but can hear you.
So
Yeah.
how about this? Test, test, test. Can you hear me now?
Great.
Great.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we're kind of going on the fly here, but it's a lot of fun. So we have 30 minutes to talk about open innovation. There's a lot of experience here that I want to dive into. We actually got a lot of questions this session from online, so I just want to jump right ahead. The first one that we have here is actually right to here. The question says, you said that GS Home Shopping, CVC, invests and distributes in Korea, US, China, and etc., all abroad. What are the types of industries and difference between the domestic and foreign markets that you're seeing? And I'm going to hand the mic over to you as well.
It's a great question, and the gentleman from the Singapore, you guys can hear or just provide a translation services, or I just speak in English or Korean, because the audience is mostly Korean, so I think better for me to speak in Korean. And
yeah, let's have that.
They are
I think it'd be great
okay.
for you to speak in Korean, and then we're going to translate briefly for you in Singapore. But to be honest with you, I think your Korean may be better than mine in Singapore, so we'll go along with it. 네, 먼저.
네.
네.
그 프레젠테이션에 잠깐 말씀드렸지만 저희가 이제 50% 정도를 한국 도메스틱 마켓하고 나머지 이제 해외 엘로케이션 하는데 이제 원칙은 이렇습니다. 예를 들어서 저희가 전략적으로 블록체인이 우리 회사의 미래에 중요하다고 생각을 하면 블록체인이 가장 발전되어 있는 지역에 투자를 합니다. 미국이고요. 실리콘밸리고요. 그럼 실리콘밸리에 있는 지역, 실리콘밸리에 있는 블록체인 전문 펀드라든지 블록체인의 주요 플레이어들한테 저희가 투자를 하게 되고요. 그 투자를 통해서 얻게 되는 네트워크와 노하우와 뭐 경험 같들이 좀 쌓이면 그럼 다시 이제 한국에 와서 훨씬 더 이 나은 판단을 하면서 투자를 또 할 수 있고 그걸 또 우리 본사에서 블록체인에 관련된 비즈니스를 만드는 데도 많은 도움이 되거든요. 그런 원칙을 가지고 지역을 선정을 합니다. 뭐 예를 들어서 AI도 저희가 AI나 머신러닝 투자를 할 때 미국이 갖고 있는 AI의 어떤 그 특성과 중국 회사들이 활용하고 있는 AI의 특성들이 좀 다르거든요. 그래서 우리가 활용 가능성과 전략적 연계의 정도에 따라서 어떤 시장 또는 어떤 스테이지의 회사에 투자를 할 것인가를 결정을 합니다.
Actually, before I ask you guys questions in Singapore, we actually have an online question. 그 한국에서 온라인 질문가 들어왔는데요. 그 비디오 혹시 연결됐나요? Not yet? Okay, well, while we get that set, I'm going to actually then head over. I'm going to talk to our colleagues in Singapore. One of the things that it looked like, as I had mentioned earlier, was that it still looks like you're incredibly active and still investing. Have you seen the number of pitches and the startups and founders that you're meeting decline? Or it seems like in Singapore, it's still quite as active.
Yeah, I'll take that question. I think the truth is I've seen actually more pitches in this last few months than probably in the last 1 year or so. Combination of factors. Obviously, foreign investments, foreign interest remains strong, but obviously they can't do due diligence. And if you're in the deep tech space, then due diligence, face-to-face due diligence can be a little bit important. You need to see the labs where they're doing things. You want to see the manufacturing lines. So they do tend to gravitate towards the local investors, of which we are, for an early stage, we are probably, fairly well known. So, we do get quite a lot of these deals coming to us. At the same time, a lot of companies that did not think that they would need a funding round so early are actually saying, okay, maybe let's raise a little bit more money because we don't know when this COVID-19 thing is going to, how it's going to pan out or when things are going to go back to normal, if at all. So let's, put more into the war chest and ensure that, we've got a sufficient runway to ride this crisis out. So we have seen actually more deals and some at very good, valuations, simply maybe because of a fear or a certain knee-jerk reaction to the circumstances. But I think things are starting to level out now. There's the interest from overseas people are starting to travel a little bit again, and everyone's getting used to Zoom and and realizing you can do due diligence using through the computer.
That's pretty incredible. I think people would have thought the inverse, that the number of founders or pitches that you would hear during a year of a pandemic would have gone down. But the fact that it's gone up is actually quite incredible. Stephen, do you also feel that way as well, or have you seen a different shift?
Yeah, but I mean, although we are based in Singapore, we don't only work with Singapore startups, right? We actually do work with startups all around the world. Although I would say that for the Singapore Foundry, we work with close to 30 to 50% of our portfolio, they are generated from Singapore. But yeah, I actually do not see much decrease in terms of activities, and that's the case even for travel-related startups. That you would think that travel is deeply impacted. While it is true, right? They are all generally preparing for 2021. When hopefully travel can resume again and they can go in full force with their new product offering that they are taking the time now to do development on. So I'll say the companies that are already thriving, they will continue to do well. Those that will shut down, it's just a matter of luck and the fact that they probably were facing trouble in the first place.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We were talking about in your presentation, fund of a fund. So 원래는 창업분들이 이제 투자자 앞에서 이제 투자를 받고 싶었지만 이쪽은 펀드를 투자하잖아요. So 뭐 500 스타트업, Altos Ventures. 펀드를 보시면 what are you looking at before you want to invest into a fund?
저희가 펀드 투자를 할 때 제일 중요한 거는 그 이제 VC에서 이제 펀드를 만들지 않습니까? 그 펀드의 전략이 뭔지를 제일 중요시하게 봅니다. 왜냐하면 그 펀드가 투자하고자 하는 영역이 있고 스테이지가 있고 이제 거기서 이제 포트폴리오를 구성을 하겠죠. 뭐 100 밀리언이면은 회사 어느 스테이지 몇 개로 구성이 됩니다. 뭐 이런 식의 전략이 딱 나와 있는데 그 전략을 보면 오케이 이 펀드가 갖고 있는 전략이 우리 회사가 지금 생각하고 있는 여러 가지 전략적 옵션에 얼마나 미트하느냐 가지고 평가하고요. 물론 이제 전략도 중요하고 GP들이 사실은 더 중요합니다. 훌륭한 GP들이라야 본인들이 가지고 있는 이 펀드 스트래티지를 엑스큐트 할 수 있기 때문에 그 GP의 capability plus the fund strategy 그 두 개를 가지고 저희가 펀드 투자 의사 결정을 합니다.
So just to kind of summarize real quick, one of the things is we have a lot of startup founders watching, and so they're obviously looking for funding. But in this case, GS is actually investing in funds. So I asked kind of what are the things that they're looking for, and obviously one is what is their strategy, what is their future vision, and then secondly, on early what stage, the amount of funding size, and so if it matches the strategy of the corporate or any corporate, that's kind of the way they're going. Is that the same for SAP, Stephen? When you guys obviously a large fund, may not be a fund of a fund, but you're a large corporate, you're looking to invest. What are you looking for that makes sense for a large corporate to even be in this space?
So in terms of our fund, right, we actually have two funds, right? There's the SAP.io fund, which is part of our organization. So we invest at an early stage. There used to be a SAP Ventures that had rebranded, Sapphire Ventures, and is now totally independent. However, SAP is still an LP in that fund. Right? Now, Sapphire Ventures, on the other hand, invests in the later stage. The commonality here is that we try to invest in companies that are strategic for what SAP is doing, and like I mentioned, could possibly help us to enlarge our total addressable market. So while we all want to make money from the investments, I think quite honestly, the bigger objective we're trying to achieve is strategic advantage for SAP.
Actually, while I have you, we actually have a question from online at the perfect time, and they're asking about your open collaboration program. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Sure. So like I mentioned, we want to work with startups that have complementary functionalities or technologies to our various products. So maybe a concrete example, if you're a HR tech startup, our HR platform is called SuccessFactors. Now, SuccessFactors do a lot of things, but hey, quite frankly, there's a lot of room for innovation. So suppose you have an application that can help screen for job applicants in a fast, effective way that can perfectly augment our SuccessFactors functionality and bring value to our customers. Now, having identified this gap, we then help the startups with product integration, and more importantly, after that, help them to list on App Center that will then help them to go to market through our account executives around the world. So it is very go-to-market driven in that sense.
Got it. So very GTM, and something that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs would love to join. So hopefully post-pandemic, if there's an opportunity, hopefully we'll get some Korean startups to join that program as well. At SG Innovate, we also have another great question. We all know that Singapore investors are kind of the catalyst of the region, especially in Southeast Asia in terms of investment. Post-pandemic though, are you seeing certain fields kind of rise above the rest? You had listed at the very end of your presentation a pretty dynamic group of startups. Post-pandemic, what are you looking at?
Okay, I think that's a great question because that's the question that, as a fund that's focused on so-called deep tech, always has to think about. It's a sort of moving target, Today's deep tech is tomorrow's gen tech. So, 3 years ago when we first started out, it was all about artificial intelligence, blockchain. Today, we don't even think about that from our investment angle because it has almost become, if a company doesn't have these technologies, they won't even be able to survive. So I think, some of the things that I've listed are at the forefront of what we are looking at. So quantum technology is important to us. We believe that's going to make a big change if and when, the first general quantum machine is going to be made available. We like the biomedical space. I think that given COVID-19, there's a lot more awareness now as to some of the deficiencies in the processes that are globally accepted in terms of how you bring drugs to market, how you look at treatments, how you even look at innovation within institutions like hospitals, healthcare institutes, and the like. So we remain bullish on these two areas. We also like the smart manufacturing space. Recently, Hyundai actually announced that they're going to set up a $500 million smart manufacturing facility in Singapore to build their electrical vehicles. I think this is a great move. We are really excited about it. And in fact, we are partnering with Hyundai to run their innovation program in Singapore as well this year. So I think smart manufacturing, quantum, biomedical, and of course, from a security perspective, agricultural food technology is important to us as well. So I think these few areas are sort of standing out in terms of things of focus moving forward for us. That doesn't mean that there are not a lot of other great areas to look at, but it just means that these are things that we are focused on.
Yeah, it's a pretty diverse range, and I actually think that from the first session, people were actually saying the exact same thing, which is actually there's actually a huge opportunity. And so despite the fact that it's been a challenging year, investors like yourself are kind of portraying a positive outlook on different industries that are going to do well, which is really exciting. We're going to switch gears now to home shopping. We're in Korea. This is probably the pedal or delivery capital of the world. If you've never experienced Korean home shopping, you're missing out. You can get a body-friend massage chair, and you can get kimchi delivered to your house in a day. It's pretty special. But the fact that GS Home Shopping is also into innovation and investments, what is GS Home Shopping as a priority looking for in investment? Does it have to be in the e-commerce space, or are you looking at a wide range of items?
몇 가지 중요한 이제 요소들이 있을 텐데요. 그 차별화라는 거를 달성하기 위해서 가장 최근에 그 키워드들 몇 개 보면 이 과거에는 이제 불가능했었던 것이 그 대량의 데이터가 생성이 되고 그게 직접 축적 분석이 가능해졌기 때문에 개인 소비자들의 행태를 예측하고 그 예측 결과에 따라서 서비스를 또는 제품을 오퍼링하는 그런 것들이 가능해진 세상이 됐습니다. 그래서 하이퍼 퍼스널라이제이션이라고 하는, 그래서 이 데이터, 빅데이터라고 그냥 흔히 얘기하는 데이터와 뭐 알고리즘과 머신러닝과 이런 다양한 요소 기술들의 결합으로 인해서 가능해진 초개인화라는 게 굉장히 중요한 유통의 서비스 경쟁력 중에 하나고요. 또 하나는 배달의 나라답게 배달, 택배, 로지스틱스, 라스마일 이런 게 또 중요한 전략적인 격전지입니다. 그래서 저희 같은 경우에는 이제 멀티 채널 플레이어예요. TV 채널도 여러 개가 있고 모바일도 있고 뭐 웹도 있고 등등 여러 채널을 갖고 있기 때문에 멀티 채널을 결합하여, 그리고 또 저희 이제 그 GS 리테일에는 이제 편의점 네트워크도 있고 슈퍼마켓도 있기 때문에 결국 이제 뭐 그 통상적인 표현으로 하자면 이제 옴니 채널 리테일러인데, 옴니 채널 리테일러가 갖고 있는 장점은 여러 채널을 심리스하게 결합할 수 있다. 그리고 그 채널을 사용하는 어떤 고객의 그 니즈를 누구보다도 정확하게 캐치해서 그에게 가장 최적화된 오퍼링 할 수 있다는 거기 때문에 이 부분하고 이제 라스마일 케이퍼빌리티를 믹스해서 고객한테 보다 나은 서비스를 제공하는 것을 저희의 이제 차별적 경쟁력 내지는 차별적 전략으로 생각하고 추진하고 있습니다.
Okay, to summarize real quick, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think one of the key things that you had mentioned was last mile logistics, which is a huge industry that's not just reserved for Korea, but globally. So you guys are looking at multi-channel distribution and also looking at the last mile and behind the last mile, obviously logistics to make it easier. That is probably one of the most fundamental fixtures of e-commerce, and you guys something you guys are pursuing. There is one more question that I want to ask within the time frame, which is also, as a large corporate, are you looking at M&A more or direct investment? So 그 큰 대기업 그 투자를 보시면 뭐 투자를 할 수 있지만 근데 이제 어느 정도 돈이 있어서 그리고 할 수 있고 인수도 할 수 있잖아요. So 창업을 보시면 그냥 바로 인수를 하고 그 회사에서 그냥 fold in 전략을 쓰는 거예요? 아니면 만약에 그냥 투자를 하고 길게
Because M&A is a kind of the marriage.
Right.
So you want to marriage once or twice or three times?
Well, I'm not going to answer that online, but to our just to translate it quick, one of the questions we got here was, is GS Home Shopping as a large corporate, are they investing directly or are they just trying to make a quick M&A and acquire a company and fold them in? So I'll hand it over.
디렉트 인베스트먼트나 이제 뭐 인디렉트 인베스트먼트는 저는 이제 가벼운 데이트라고 생각합니다. 그래서 가벼운 데이트를 통해서 서로를 잘 이해하고 핏이 맞는지를 충분히 검증한 다음에 결혼해야 되겠죠. 그래서 저는 M&A 당연히 하는 것이 중요하지만 너무 성급한 M&A는 상당히 위험하고 많은 경우 실패한다고 저는 생각합니다. 그래서 충분한 시간을 두고 경영진과 그 회사의 그 본질을 이해하고 또 그들도 우리를 이해해야 돼요. 그 과정을 거치면서 M&A가 자연스럽게 이루어지는 게 가장 성공의 가능성을 높여주는 일이라고 생각하기 때문에 M&A 중요하지만 성급하게 해서는 안 된다라고 저는 생각합니다.
So, a kind of a fun way to describe this is dating, or yone, which is, I guess, popular in Korea. When you're investing, you're kind of dating. So, it's kind of lightly looking at the startup. You're looking at whether or not it's a fit. Can we go long term? But if you do get through the dating process and there is more of a long-term prospect and a longer relationship, obviously M&A becomes an option. Switching gears, going global is a huge theme in Korea. One of the areas and markets that Korean startups would like to go to is Singapore. A lot of large corporates also have their headquarters there. If you can give a tip to young entrepreneurs in Korea on if they want to expand to Singapore, what would be kind of the right way to do it? Do they look for a local partner? Do they go it alone? How would you advise those looking into getting into the Singapore market? All right, I'll ask that to both of you guys.
Stephen, you want to start first or?
Sure. I mean, I actually do work with quite a lot of foreign entrepreneurs, both in my current and previous roles. Right? To be honest, I mean, whether you're going to Singapore or other countries, it's always generally the same advice, right? Figure out if whatever that you're selling, is it relevant for your target customers in the market that you're planning to expand to, right? There could be certain nuances in the market that, well, may not be the right fit for your product, right? And if so, what are the changes that you might need to make from a product perspective? Now, having figured it out, I would say that in Singapore, it's so business friendly that you don't really need to find a partner, unlike maybe some other countries where it's probably a much wiser choice to do so, right? Just come here, spend a couple of months doing your groundwork, figure out who your target customers would be, make some local hires that can help you drive your sales and marketing related activities. And I guess that's about it. Singapore is as friendly as you can get.
Xin Hui, actually, yeah, it's a good point. I may actually kind of tweak my question a little bit then. Southeast Asia in general is a region that is incredibly fast growing, a lot of potential, and I'm sure when you are investing, you're not only investing in Singapore, you're investing in the region. So I guess my question would be a little more broader then, which is, if those, not just in Korea, but abroad, are looking into the Southeast Asia market, how to approach that? What countries would be a priority for you? Is it Indonesia? Is it Thailand? How do we approach this region? Because it's so popular, but also hard to tackle.
Yeah, I think that variation is important, what you've just done to the question, because I agree with Stephen, ultimately it's all about understanding the market, and that resonates as well, whether you're talking about Indonesia, Singapore, or the like. I think it's important to understand the stage or the culture of that country. One of our evaluation criteria when we make an investment is to understand the change management required to adopt that technology. So it is one thing and I'm just going to give an example. Let's say Samsung develops a great new phone and they just recently launched one. It would work pretty well in Singapore. There'll be high demand for it. But even though there might be bigger markets in Southeast Asia, the traction may not be as high there because the differences in income levels are quite different from those in Singapore, and people might not be willing to spend so much on the phone. So I think these little variances are going to be important. You've got to know who you're selling it to, what your price point is like. I think one of the good things about Korea is that, honestly, the Korean culture is very popular in Singapore. I mean, my wife watches K-pop dramas and all that. She follows it very assiduously, and I'm pretty sure that the acceptance of the culture and some of the products you have would be quite easy to assimilate. So I think it's really about understanding your customer, understanding whether they can pay for it, and how they would like that product to be delivered to them.
Fantastic. So I'm getting here pinged on time, and so we're going to ask one last question. this is kind of a question that I like asking because there's no right answer. 10 years from now, 10년 뒤에 만약에 잘했으면 what does success look like for GS Home Shopping as a corporate?
저는 리타이어해서 행복하게 살고 있을 것 같고요.
He said he'd like to retire in 10 years. That's the main goal.
10년 후면 저는 이렇게 생각합니다. GS 홈쇼핑이 그동안 열심히 그 구축한 이 CVC를 통해서 만들어낸 혁신 생태계가 일종의 변화를 위한 플랫폼으로 작용을 해서 콜 비즈니스가 트랜스폼을 성공적으로 하고 새로운 비즈니스들이 몇 개 붙어서 전혀 다른 비즈니스 포트폴리오를 가지고 있는 더 큰 회사로 성장을 해 있기를 기대하고요. 그렇게 함에 있어서 중요한 역할을 할 수 있는 그런 그 스타트업 이노베이션 이코시스템 만드는 게 되게 중요한 지금 현재 과제라고 생각합니다.
I think that's right. So he had mentioned that basically the larger goal really is to be a growth platform and a platform that other businesses within GS Home Shopping can grow, but allowing other separate businesses to be able to kind of thrive in the future. I'm going to actually ask the same questions to both of you as we wrap up here. In 5 years from now, if you look at your funds and the work you're doing, what does success look like to you? Stephen, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. For us, the primary objective is really to build meaningful partnerships with startups. Right? So for us, success will mean that a lot of the partners that we have worked together, they have risen through SAP's partner ecosystem, and they end up being SAP's solution extension partners. And that is very significant because the moment you are a Solex partner, SAP sells your product on your behalf on SAP paper. And you can imagine having tens of thousands of sales executives around the world selling your product, how significant that would be for your company's revenue. But it's a tough road to reach there, right? So we do hope that more of the partners that we work with can slowly move up the curve together with us.
I think everyone would love to have the SAP sales team working on their behalf. And then last question to you, SG Innovate, very innovative, very diverse portfolio. In 5 years, what does that portfolio look like to you?
Okay, maybe I'll take it to 10 years.
10 years,
because
okay.
5 years, probably quantum technology isn't, going to be nascent. The truth is, and I can tell you, my boss is going to kick me for saying this, but in 10 years, I genuinely hope that there is no need for an organization like SG Innovate. SG Innovate was set up because there are gaps in the market. There were funding gaps in the early stages. There were developmental gaps in the early stages. I think you've heard from Stephen, and obviously that's a common thread amongst most of the multinationals. They would love to work with startups, but probably at a later stage. But someone has got to work with them at the earlier stage. And in Singapore, unlike in Silicon Valley, unlike in Tel Aviv, unlike in some of the more mature startup ecosystems, there is no such organization or no such entity to help bridge the funding gap, to help bridge, the knowledge gap that is needed to, to give a little spur to some of these emerging technologies so that they can bridge that chasm to the multinational markets. So the truth is, in 10 years, I'm hoping that the market will have matured and evolved in Singapore to the extent where the private sector sort of fills that particular need, and then we will go on and do something else. But I think 5 years is still going to be a little bit tricky. So our portfolio probably would become more heavily skewed towards areas like quantum technology, neuromorphic chips, and the like. But
Hello,
I don't
hi
think it's going
everyone.
to change too much.
Well, that's pretty cool. I think in 10 years, you're basically saying you won't have a job, but that's also a pretty ambitious answer. And if your boss is going to kick you, he'd probably do it virtually. So that's a really unique way to end this session. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us today, both from Singapore and in Korea live. That concludes our session 2. We're going to take a 30-minute break, and we'll be back with session 3. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you very, very soon. Thanks so much for joining us. All right.
Thank you. Bye.